It's monthly Mormon Mondays. It's time for the secret handshake. Tune in and reach through the veil. It's time for monthly Mormon Monday.
Welcome to another episode of Monthly Mormon Monday. It's not exactly monthly. We're trying to do it more than just monthly, but it sets the bar low so that we never feel like we're too far behind. Monthly Mormon Monday, where Heidi Love attempts to ex-Mormon-splain everything to you. I'll be a little bit more receptive, and we sometimes have guests that just jump in unannounced. So who knows if someone will show up. Today's topic is one that I am the absolute least familiar with, and I'm just going to be relying on whoever's here. And if it's just you, then I'll get the Heidi version of Brigham Young. And just to get it out of the way ahead of time, you mean Brigham Young? Am I right? Okay, I did the thing. Yeah. The joke writes itself. How you doing? Are you excited for Brigham Young today?
I am. I'm excited, and I get my new car today. So yay! Woo.
One of the other pleasures of being an ex-Mormon, right? Because if you're Mormon, you're not allowed to own cars, or is that just Amish?
No, that's the Amish. Yeah, no, we're good.
Potato, whatever.
They like their material things, actually. You know that from the Mormon mob.
Well, that's one of the things that I like about them.
Well, I might convince you today to not be a Mormon because there's some heavy things you might have to live up to if you're going to do it.
Okay. So that actually starts out on a good track here, because my understanding is that Mormonism is kind of Joseph Smith. And as we learned in the last episode, even after people start criticizing Joseph Smith and deconstructing the man, there's an idea that, well, God did talk to him because he had these divine thoughts and he was able to translate this thing, and everything else, you don't worry about that. Like, just focus on the God part. That's a good part. And to me, Brigham Young is sort of just an extension of that, even more so. And let me open it up to a question, because this is something I just only don't know. Is Brigham Young a prophet too? Like, did he talk to spirits?
Yes. So every prophet for the church since the beginning, and every prophet sustained after Joseph in the Mormon church. Now, remember, there's lots of Mormon church branches, which we'll get in today because this caused it. But anyways, whoever sustains them, they say they are a living prophet, seer, and revelator. So even the prophet now, he is a living prophet talking to God every day, whenever he wants to. That's what they do.
And he hears back. Like, if he says, "Yo, God, are you there?" and God texts him back and he doesn't leave him on red.
Yeah. Nope. They believe in direct revelation. It's not dead like the Catholics believe or other religions believe. There's a certain time frame where all, direct interaction with God kind of stopped, and Mormons definitely do not believe that. So
So Brigham Young and every other prophet after him, and I'll keep saying it like that, just because it sounds that way. So they talk directly
to God, to the big guy.
And does he have did he have any influence in the Book of Mormon, or is that all Joseph Smith?
No. The Book of Mormon was divinely written. So he says that was all given to him magically, like perfectly magically. And so this was all divinely inspired, divinely written, everything is divine that comes from the prophets. However, here we go. Here's the slippery slope of the Mormons. They like to say, well, the prophet's only a man. The prophet's a man and he can be wrong. So we end up with this thing called the Journal of Discourses. And this is extremely important for anyone that doesn't. If you're an ex-Mo or Mormon, you probably know about this. So Momos and ex-Mos, they know the Journal of Discourses is the books, many volumes of many things. They are like put together kind of like scriptures like JOD, Journal of Discourses 13:2 or whatever. And these are all the things that they really hate that people said. So they just take them out and say, yeah, we don't want to deal with that anymore. So that's where it goes.
It's convenient.
It is. Yeah. Because when they want people to listen, they say, well, the prophet talks directly to God and he's the prophet, seer, and revelator. But when they mess it up, they're like, well, the prophet's only a man. So that goes in this other book. So don't listen.
I
to
mean,
them.
if I can just be devil's, or I guess Joseph Smith advocate in this case, I sort of understand that though, right? Because if you're saying that the prophet was just a man, then anyone saying the prophet was a man is also a man. So anyone that you encounter in the Mormon church ever, unless they've been second anointed, I assume, but anyone else you talk to, they are prone to the same failures as even a prophet would be. So why not fudge and change the stories as needed? Because if the ultimate goal is to get the divine voice of God or the divine message, which transcends human language, then who cares if you take a story out or you change a frog into a salamander or you do any of those things, as long as the end goal is that they get to do the secret handshake through the veil, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, they get to make the rules. I know that. So we're going to run into this today, specifically, not so much for Joseph, but more for Brigham, because Brigham wasn't a charismatic or so suave like Joseph was. He was a rules with a fist kind of guy. He was coming in a mess, taking charge, and saying, "This is how it's going to be," and that's kind of what Brigham's known for. And so eventually a lot of things that Brigham says gets washed under the rug by the next prophet after him. And then that prophet's like, well, brother Young is dead now. And that was then, and this is now, and la-di-da. And this is what we're doing at this point, because he made a lot of problems for the church.
I like how the leaders of the church, again, from a Roman Catholic perspective, where everything's like divine decree, and you almost feel like you're not even allowed to interact with this other than thou person. But when it comes to Mormonism, it's almost just like getting bounced around babysitters or something, where it's like, I don't care what your last babysitter did.
Yep.
This is how we do it. But it's a little bit less official, a little bit more informal. Did Brigham Young have any words about Joseph Smith when he came in that was like, hey, screw what this guy was about? Or did he continue from where Joseph Smith left?
Yeah, he continued from where Joseph Smith left, but I will tell you this. He added. He did curse Joseph Smith's wife to hell. So his first
Which
wife,
one?
Emma.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew it was coming. And because she was not a supporter of him or so Joseph, when Joseph died, there was a big mess because Joseph had been making lots of promises, as one does, to lots of people, including his cousin Sidney Rigdon, which he made a promise that possibly Sidney was going to start leading the church. But then he told Brigham was in the position in the quorum of the 12 presidency that he should be the next one, because they have this whole like division of like how it goes down the line. And so at that point, he also had told everyone that his son was going to lead the church. Problem is, his son was 11. And so this left a huge disaster. And the problem with Sidney Rigdon was well, maybe he wasn't a cousin. That was Oliver Cowdery. Sidney Rigdon was close with him, though. Sidney Rigdon's daughter made a huge issue with Joseph Smith right before he died. So there was some ties that kind of got broken there because he wanted to marry his daughter. And she was like, nah, bro. And he was like, well, you're going to go to hell then. And she was like, bring hell. She did not care. She was like, I'm not, I would rather go to hell than be married to you. So there was that. And so it made a big problem between the two of them, obviously, if they're bros, right? Like bros before hoes, but that didn't work when it's your kid. So like, he moved away. He'd kind of distanced himself. He didn't like say anything bad about the church, but when all this was going on, he got sick. He was not feeling well, Sidney Rigdon. And so when he showed up to this kind of like a presidential debate about this whole situation, because they'd already all said, Emma's going to hell. She's taking her 11-year-old kid. We don't care about her. She doesn't endorse polygamy. Let her go to hell. So she's over there. That's how the RLDS forms. The other two are fighting for this stance of like, who's going to be the guy? And so basically they gave speeches and got up there and started like really like a presidential speech deliverance, right? Like, hey, I'm the candidate, vote for me. But there's some things that apparently happened during this speech. Number one, Sidney Rigdon wasn't feeling well. He felt sick and he came in looking sick, and he just wasn't charismatic or great like he normally was. He normally was like that. He looked like weakness and bad. And then we got Brigham with his like, rah, 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 I'm the guy. So he's kind of like this powerful guy, but also people
You're making it
swear.
sound like a Trump versus Biden debate a little bit.
Serious. It was. And then all of a sudden, all these people in the crowd. Now, this is, I don't know what to make of this. This is a story within the Mormon church that wasn't documented because it was too holy to document, apparently. I love this when they do this. But 9 years later, somehow it gets documented that all these people in the crowd saw Brigham Young turn into Joseph Smith before their eyes. He transfigured. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, it sounds like, Jesus of Nazareth. It was so miraculous. They were like, this is so holy. Let's wait about 30 years before anyone writes anything about this.
Yeah, so it was bad. So I'll tell you, like, all of a sudden, all these people are coming up with that. Also, a big part of it is, the other guy, Rigdon, really wasn't part of the whole, like, let's do polygamy thing. And you've got all these guys that already have been tasting a little bit of this, let's have 10 wives, 20 wives. Do you know how many wives Brigham Young had? We'll start with that.
I cheated. I looked it up. It's north of 50.
55. So the whole point of polygamy, and I want to tell you guys this, he believed in marrying family, and he married both his mother-in-laws. So he banged both his mother-in-laws.
Okay. Well, let's actually clarify on that. If you marry a Mormon man, is it guaranteed you're putting out for him, or is there, like, you just sign an extra wife up because you need help with the laundry?
So here's the thing. I truly believe most of the time it's sexually related, because you're supposed to go forth and procreate and replenish the earth. This is the whole point of having polygamy. And the problem is our man, Brigham, he failed miserably at this, because I'm going to tell you something. Like, my brother-in-law he is Warren Jeff's nephew. He had 3 wives his mom's when he was little. And by the time he was like 12, there was over 40 kids. Now there's 12 wives. He doesn't even know how many brothers and sisters he has. That's procreating, replenishing the earth. Brigham Young had 55 wives. Did you check how many kids?
How many?
57. Bro, you failed.
I mean, maybe in the short term, but over a longer period of time, if any of those 57 end up themselves having like 40, then it's all kind of the same in the end, I think.
But you know that he has all these chicks he's supposed to be knocking up all the time, and he's having one night stands, basically. Less than that with some, because some really never did procreate. So it's kind of interesting to me. He had favorites, he played favorites, and everyone knew it, and he did not hide it. He had certain wives that he took with him everywhere that he liked way better than other wives.
I mean, even if you've got 55 husbands, I feel like you would develop a preference for your top 3 or top 5 at least.
Sure. Yeah, he definitely did. And I'd like to bring this quote to the table since we're talking about marrying. He said this: I believe in sisters marrying brothers and brothers having their sisters for wives. This is something pertaining to our marriage relation. The whole world will think what an awful thing it is, what an awful thing it would be if the Mormons just say, we believe in marrying brothers and sisters. So that's one of the quotes I bring to the table, let alone knowing that he married his mother-in-laws, all the things that he liked to do there. Unfortunately, this is going to kill your hope of being a Mormon, because he does say the only men who become gods and even sons of gods are those who enter into polygamy. Others attain unto a glory that may be permitted to come into presence of the Father and Son, but they will never reign as kings in glory. They had blessings offered unto them, and they refused to accept them. So also he said, if you weren't married by 23, you were a menace to society.
That sounds right. Well, but again, with the same justification, couldn't I just be like, well, that was then and this is now?
I mean, that's what they try to say, but I will tell you, like, he also says fun things like this: I have no wife whom I have loved so well that I would not put a javelin through her heart with clean hands.
Amen.
So there's that. But I will tell you, this is the split. This is the split eventually in the future with the Warren Jeffs clan. This is why they held true to the whole situation of polygamy because they truly believe if you do not have 3 wives, you are not going to heaven. And they don't care who says what after that because it's part of the original Joseph doctrine. So they're not down. They're like, no, we're not doing that. And that's why they left.
What if you're infertile or you're beyond the age of being able to reproduce? Are you just like, are you
Then
going
it's
straight to
fun
hell,
times.
basically? I
No,
mean,
no. You still got to get married though. You still got to get married.
so you
can't-
would still get married even if it were known that there was no chance that you would ever produce a kid. So then what's your role in Mormonism at that point? Are you
two things happen in reality. The polygamy, I'll explain, like if they don't have kids, they're really shunned. I knew a lady that was the 3rd wife and she was the youngest wife, and the youngest wife, there's jokes in Mormonism. They say, okay, what does your oldest wife do? She stays home with the kids. What does your 2nd wife do? She goes to work. What does your 3rd wife do? She makes babies. So, okay. So when you can't make the babies, she had her uterus completely burst during her pregnancy and no more babies can come. So she had one and it was a one and done. And she was shunned and really looked down upon in the community. She did go get a job and she did bring in money for the family, which they do. But yeah, it was really, really bad as the youngest wife. And you can almost guarantee there's another one coming down the line because you failed.
The second wife, when that happens, does a second wife, is she like, well, I guess I'm leaving my job now? Like, does she just know that she's going to be like the stand-in?
Well, I mean, it all depends on their family dynamics. It's really not like 1st, 2nd, 3rd. That's kind of an example, but they always continue to have babies clear until they cannot have babies anymore. Like one is not let off the hook. They'll have babies like triplets, like 3 come at a time, all 3 different wives.
I don't have an intention to be crude here. I just, I've got a curious mind. So is this acceptable or looked down upon, or is there a certain technique that could you just line up like 10 of the wives in one night and at like 2 p.m. you knock out that one, an hour later you knock out the next, or do you have to like shower between, you have to wait days between?
So there's no funny business. There has been documented funny business, but there's supposed to not be funny business of interacting with the wife. Is like they all have separate homes or areas of living. Like they might have quarters in a home.
Could they just each have their own bunk bed?
Like it's actually really kind of crazy. They even each have their own kitchens. Like when you go into a polygamous home, it's completely like sealed off. Like these families.
So does Brigham Young have 55 kitchens?
He has a whole bunch of houses. And so back then, and one of them is still up. It's called the Lion's House, and you can go tour it in Salt Lake City. So, but these women didn't have their own quarters. They quickly came into the knowledge of maybe this should happen because we all hate each other, and they hated polygamy, and he knew it. He knew it. There was a lot of women that were complaining, trying to leave him, suing him, all kinds of stuff. And he was like, if you want to go, but you're not going to go to heaven now. You're a bad person. And so, yeah. And he actually said he had a Bowie knife for anybody that left the church after receiving the knowledge, like people like me, or if the wife wanted to leave or whatever. Yeah, it was a whole thing. So, but eventually these polygamy people find out it's best to divide things up into days. And so like, he'll go to this house for this night and that house for that night. And they do it like this in a rotation because of the fighting. So
this almost sounds like in the like Goodfellas or in the Mafia. They got a guma, and the guma is like the side piece that gets their own apartment and their own house, and they don't interact with the wives. And you can have a few different gumas. So it just seems like it makes sense that each wife gets their own house the same way that your guma gets their own apartment somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're kind of funny about that now. There are very few instances, even in the Jacob Hamblin home where you can go visit as well in Santa Clara, Utah. He had a couple of wives and the houses are divided, but the kitchen was shared. But like the bedrooms were like, these are her rooms, these are her rooms, and the kids all slept upstairs together. They always bring the kids in together because they want them to be raised as a family. And oftentimes one mother is more over the children and one's like more over the cooking or the house chores or getting the hell out of the house and going to work. Like they're, they'll talk to the
Hear me out. This is a groundbreaking idea that needs to be produced ASAP. But a show that's like The Bachelor, except everyone's already wives, and it's just about constantly ranking, and it's all like all the rooms are
They have
videotaped.
that. Sister wives, man. Sister wives, and
is it
it went
reality or is
badly.
it fiction though?
That's I think that was a real show, and actually it ended. Well, the show still goes on, but all his wives left him, but his favorite. He got a younger favorite wife, and normally the first wife is the shit. Okay, kind of like your mob rules. The wife is the wife, right? Like she's the wife. She gets the wifely stuff. You don't get to be the madam and come on in her house and be like, I'm the shit. No, that doesn't work. So the first wife is the one that's over everything, but she gave up her position, divorced him legally because the new wife had children that needed to be covered under health insurance. And these kids weren't his kids. And so it was a whole thing. And so they needed to adopt these children. He couldn't legally adopt. It was a mess. And so eventually this elder wife, she like gives up all her position to help the younger wife and then gets screwed because she also was infertile. She only had one kid. So he's not going to visit her anymore. Like, why? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
How does that's another interesting concept. How does health insurance work for Mormons? Because I assume a Mormon signs up for a job and they're like, oh yeah, I'd like the family health insurance option, please. And like, oh great, how many kids you have? And then like the form goes up to like 6.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, it's actually 40. Like, do the insurance companies just say, oh no, you're not welcome here?
And a lot of them do what's called bleeding the beast. And what they'll do is they'll claim the first wife's kids, the one that are under the marriage, and the other wives will go get help from the state, like Medicaid, and say, well, I don't know who the dad is. So I'm not legally married.
I love that.
Yeah. And they get food stamps. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put that into the tallies under reasons to join Mormonism, is that they intentionally bleed the state. Yeah, they bleed the beast. I like that.
Yep. Bleeding the beast is a real thing. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. But although it is our taxes, which sucks, but
they can print it though. They can literally just print it.
Our taxes aren't going where they should anyway. It's going to Ukraine. So let's not be silly.
Our taxes only exist to give our currency value. Because if they didn't force you to pay them in their own money, then there would be no reason to have it at all. So
exactly. So I'm like, well, whatever, leave those people alone. They started prosecuting him. The only thing that I think should be prosecuted is what they prosecuted with Warren Jeffs and the big mistake that he made. And the whole reason why my brother-in-law got kicked out with his 2 wives. Well, the wives got reassigned. They get immediately reassigned to a new husband and his children. He didn't see his children for like 7 years. But immediately he was like, yo, uncle, like this is a bad plan. I don't know about these underage things. Like, I don't know if he asked him to, he won't tell me. He's like, I'm not going to do this. Basically, I don't support this. These girls are too young, because his dad, Warren Jeff's dad, Rulon, he always made sure they were 18. And that's fair play. Like anything over 18, if you decide to do that and you're 18, even if you're brought up in a cult, I don't care. He still said yes, So, yeah.
Well, so again, I read
Warren
ahead a little bit.
13, yeah.
And Brigham Young's youngest wife was 15, Clarissa Ross. So he kind of sets this precedent too, right?
Yeah, those days I'm kind of like, well, my grandma was 14, when she got married and had a baby, and my grandpa was 16. Like, it wasn't that unheard of back then.
Have you reported your grandpa to the authorities yet for statutory rape?
Nah, he's dead. He's out.
I mean, you can posthumously do it if you do it in the Mormon court system, I assume, right?
No, nah. They were married for time and all eternity. They wouldn't want that.
Okay, they get a pass. Well,
yeah.
So let's start out with some pros on Brigham Young before we get into all the different cons. So here, let's do a top 10 just off the top of my head. American expansionism. He kind of represents this early industrious, like, let's just go ahead and conquer the wilderness and establish cities. And he did it in real life. Like, he actually developed large portions, right? Salt Lake City wouldn't exist without him.
He did not mean to do it in America, though. When this happened, Utah was part of Mexico, and he was actually running, supposedly. I think there's a whole lie there, but supposedly he was running from the law because of his polygamy. But then he gets here, and if you're running from the law, he's like, hey, the first thing I'm going to do in Utah is say, government that I'm running from, can we make the railroad here? Because I'll help you.
I mean,
doesn't make
technically,
sense.
it's still America. It's just not the United States of America. And if anything,
Yeah.
I believe that America is the greatest continent on Earth, not necessarily the greatest country on Earth. I think that's easier to stand behind. So
Sure.
pro American in a general sense. Okay, he's industrious.
He was probably pissed. He was probably pissed because he named the state Zion, and he wanted it to be like the Beehive State and all this stuff. And then the whole thing happened where Utah ends up back part of the United States, and they were like, "Nah, bro, we can't be going with no Zion. We're gonna."
You said the Beehive State. He wanted to be called the Beehive State.
It is still the Beehive State. It is still the Beehive State.
Utah is the Beehive State.
You know about bees too. Don't even play with me. Yes.
No idea what you're talking about.
Come on, get out of here with that. And so, yes, it is. And actually, the emblem on our flag, the seal, is a beehive. Yes. And there are bees and beehives all over this damn state. Yep.
And Brigham Young was a Freemason too. He officially joined, not just through proxy of being a Mormon, but he actually joined. Is that pretty common with the prophets? Like, do you have to be a Freemason in order to be a Mormon prophet?
Well, it's changing. So for a while there, yes, it seemed like it. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, don't do that. And now it's like, yeah, it's fine again. So I don't know.
I mean, the way that I would see it from way outside point of view, but to be a Freemason first and then rise up in the Mormon church, it's almost like you got to take pre-trig before you do normal trig, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to at least learn the basics before you start doing all the advanced frilly stuff.
Well, according to them, they will say that you guys don't have the Freemasonry. That's true. That the Mormons have the only true form of Freemasonry, and that it was corrupted in Solomon's time, and that you guys get a thing right now and then, but they have the true Freemasonry. So.
Well, they're just not high up enough yet. That's what I always hear.
As much as I'm studying and some things that we're going to go over today, including Joseph Smith, I used to laugh at this, and then I've been delving into different Hermetic pieces and ancient, like Egyptian masonry and all these different things. And I used to just think they were super crazy because Joseph Smith and Brigham Young had some interesting quotes about people living on the moon and on the sun. But the more you learn about these other branches of Freemasonry, it makes a whole lot more sense, and it doesn't seem so ridiculous and silly. So
you're talking about for when you say Egyptian Freemasonry, it's mostly French Freemasonry, Memphis Mizraim, and a few others, which is I liken it to, and I don't believe that that's considered regular masonry in the States, at least, maybe in Europe where they just anything goes. But I liken it to the same way that the Mormons would say, oh, everything written in the Bible actually took place here under our feet, like on this land, and everyone else is confused. I think it's the same thing where like some of the French Freemasonry, Egyptian Masonry and stuff, they just take the same ideas and say, oh, but it happened here, or, oh, it happened within this dynasty.
Well, and even before the Martinists, I'm talking clear back to magical, mystical masonry that goes clear back to Egypt. And they're talking about like a whole bunch of other things on top of it. So, I mean, it depends on where you pop in at, right? Like every time I think I have an answer, I don't have an answer. So it's whatever. But I mean, it's like from what I can see, from what I've gathered so far, this is a sect inside a sect, just like you and I have talked about the church, you know, that there's this magical weird stuff that nobody else knows. And all these other people are just in the crowd and they're like, we're just trying to go to heaven. And the top people are doing some weird things. Like, I think that this is the same thing. These mystical rites of masonry are really hush hush. Try and find a Martinist, even though they exist, that will come and talk on your show.
Well, the other, actually, yeah, that is now on my bucket list. I will find a Martinist to come on talk on the show.
Yes.
So, in your estimation, in your biased Exmo estimation, how many people even know that the magic of the magic underpants are Freemasonic symbols, and that's what's making them magic?
Nowadays more than there used to be because of the internet, but very few probably still.
Like
I would say 50% maybe now because of the internet.
Do they ever come out and say it in temple, or if you ask someone, if you're like, hey, what makes it magic? They're like, oh, it's a square and compass, or is that just never talked about?
They talk about the mark and what it symbolizes far before it's a square and compass for Masons. Like, they're not going to say that. They're going to say this
Never, like you
blah,
never
blah.
hear that this came from Masonry.
I never knew this was about Masonry until my husband showed me on YouTube.
So what are the like? What's the explanation why there's a Masonic tools, a square and a compass on your clothing? Like, what's the non-Mason version of that?
The ruler on the knee is every knee shall bow. Boy, I gotta pull this up because
right. But why a ruler? Why not a happy face? Why not a heart? Why not a a little swirl or something? Why is it a Masonic tool?
I mean, I don't know why they did that, other than that they were all Masons and Joseph Smith kifed your stuff. I mean, we all know that. Like, he did his rites for his Masonic rites, and 3 weeks later he made the temple rites. So I'm like, I don't think there's any other way, right? He Christized it. He Christized your signs and symbols. He changed the names to like Christian-y stuff. And then, that's it. But the square represents justice.
Well, Masons already have that. It's called You Work Right. Like that. Masons already have their own Christianized version.
That. They're never going to say that. They're just going to tell you that the square represents justice and fairness of God, and that people will receive what they earn, and that compass will lead you in the right direction, following the North Star. So they're not going to tell you, oh, I got this from blah, blah, blah. It also symbolizes duties to our neighbor, our brother. So it's all the things that you're probably already used
right.
to,
Well, I guess it's what it stands for, but I guess the underlying question remains like, okay, but why not a mountain or a happy face or any other shape? Why a square and compass? So, okay, they can't tell you that.
Masons,
well,
they were all Masons.
And it's too holy for you to know about.
Well, and I mean, I think they basically just don't want, I think nowadays they would be fine with it. And my guess is it's probably changed, because now if you go to LDS.org or whatever, they have a whole thing on, oh, you may have noticed Mormons have Mason stuff. Here's why. And back in the day, that would never occur. You would not be able to ask about that. That's sacred. Don't you know that? Like, this is what it means. This is why you wear it. That's all. And so, like, that's all. And you just don't. And also there's some rules of engagement here. So you can never talk about temple things outside the temple. So you can't go just ask anyone. You've got to be in the temple doing a temple session while you're busy. There's no way to do that. And then you're going to be in trouble. Like,
how much trouble are we talking?
Probably disfellowshipped or put on a 6-month hiatus from the temple, or you'll get a talking to, or you could end up at court. You can end up in LDS court, where you have to go before the quorum and you have to sit there and talk to the people in your area. And so it can go.
When you say court, is there an actual chance that you would go to jail or be fined? Or is this all just like funny religious court? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
They'll excommunicate.
I mean, but if you've already been through temple, right? If you've done everything, but if you've been everything up to second anointed, right? Because after you're second anointed, you're just like, whatever, do whatever you want. I've already got the golden ticket. I'm already going to the chocolate factory. Slippery
slope, because we've often argued this between exmos. Like, if you're excommunicated after a second anointing, does it really matter? And all these people that speak out, supposed anti Mormons or ex-Mormons that have got the second anointing, by the way, I never had that. Are they really just plants, like planted up, like planned opposition? Like, because they really aren't going to have those consequences. They've already had their place made sure, unless they murder someone or deny the Holy Ghost. So I don't know.
Unless it's a blood atonement, right?
I mean, the blood atoning, Brigham was really, really into the blood atonement.
Well, he started it. Didn't he start the blood atonement?
I think it was already going on with, there's Brighamites and there's Danites. So I'm pretty sure the Danites predate the Brighamites. And so I think some of it was already secretly going on, but yes, Brigham Young continued it, and he continued it to a really high level. He was all about the blood atoning. He was 100% on board of that. In fact, there's some quotes that are just amazing from him. Let me find it, because it's
can women be second anointed?
Yes, women are actually, I've been studying, I've been studying about Melchizedek. And Melchizedek is the priesthood that we receive. And I was just looking for my notes, but I think I took them upstairs. But Melchi means male and female, right? Like, and then Zedek, I can't remember what the other part is, but it was like the coming together of this, okay? And that is not how the Mormons play. They play very priesthood, male, 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 man, 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 man. So what happens at the second anointing is the woman actually gives the final blessing. She seals it in the bedroom of their home, not in the temple. So entering sex magic a little bit there. They're not doing sex.
In every second anointing, there's a sexual component.
I'm just saying you do it in your marital bedroom. You do that.
Wait. Hold on. Let's slow down a little bit. So the second anointing, I was assuming that you go into like a stuffy little temple and there's a bunch of dudes wearing special coats and stuff.
All of that, yes.
But you're not actually fully second anointed until you go into your marital bedroom, and that's the final step.
And she lays hands on your head, which is unheard of. Like, you do not give blessings as a woman, period, dot. And this was my question when I was in the temple. This chick is coming at me. You saw my dumb little video where she's like doing the blessings on me. And all I'm thinking is, why is she doing it? Like, where's the guy? Where is the guy? That she has no authority. She doesn't hold the priesthood, but she does, because she had the second anointing, which made her a priestess, god or goddess of that whole situation is the actual term. So she now has the authority. And back in Joseph Smith times, women did do this. And Zena, I can't remember her last name right now because she got married to Brigham Young and she was with somebody else, but she was with all these people. And she was known to have the most blessings that came true in healing back in the day. She's considered a witch of LDS. We have to do an episode on her. But anyway, that went away. And then the second anointing part only happens with the women when you're going through this. So first you go in the temple, you do the stuffy stuff. They're doing like washing your feet and anointing you with oil and all the things, Jesus-y stuff. And then when you go home, you do this blessing. She seals it. And that is so unusual to me that a feminine energy would be the last thing but if you know enough about Hermetics and you know enough about Masonry, it makes 100% sense because they're bringing the masculine and the feminine together. So
yeah, honestly, we're selling it again. We're back into like the pros here, but yeah, it sounds like there's absolutely a sex magic component to the second anointing. And the way that you were talking about foot play and oil and like, it just sounds like a P. Diddy freak off party in some way.
Yeah. Like might be.
Break out the oil, girl. We're going to second anoint up in here.
When my great grandma went through her first temple sealing, they now do it with a representation and a little oil on the top of the head. But my grandma, because I complained about being naked, my great grandma looked at me and she's like, I was put in a tub with oil in it naked. And I was like, what? And she's like, don't complain. Like, she was super old. She was like, no.
And then her grandma shows up. And she's like, well, let me tell you what I had to do. They're like, no, grandma, not now.
No, I was shook and shocked. And I was like, holy crap. She's like, at least you're covered and stuff. Like, we did all this. And I was like, wow, I'm certainly glad that wasn't my time.
The Mormon grandma versions of I had to walk 2 miles to school in 2 feet of snow are wild. Right?
Yes, they are. They are scary. And I wore this today, speaking of grandmas in my family, because you sent me that thing on the Micmacs. And I wanted you to know my grandpa was my great grandpa was one of the people that were trying to do what Brigham Young wanted him to do by marrying all the natives so that we could mix our seed with their seed to make them white again. And she was a Micmac. Yeah. She was
delightsome. Make them delightsome again.
Yep. You got it.
We'll have to do a whole nother show on that one too, because that one's fascinating to me about how the hieroglyphics might have actually been Native American. Anyway, it's totally different rabbit hole.
They look a lot like Enochian too. I think they might be a combination, but
well, there's an interesting theory that I was talking to someone the other day that maybe it's because a lot of people think that explorers showed up to the Americas and they found remnants of Phoenician writing and Egyptian writing and all these. And the first thought is, wow, when did the Phoenicians get here? When did the Vikings, when did the Egyptians bring their culture here? What if you flip that on its head? What if everything started in the Americas and sprouted out from there? And it's not that America somehow had a traveler that dropped off their Phoenician writing. It's that Phoenician and Egyptian writing started here and it spread out to other places where it took root. I think it's an interesting concept.
I mean, I would love to talk. I haven't talked or asked about Narco Longo stuff yet because I don't know him. And then I saw some.
He's a good friend. He's a friend of the show. He's actually a show sponsor.
Yeah, I knew he was. And so I just was a little nervous because I didn't know how to contact him.
Let's get him on. Yeah, hit him up. See if we can get him on. Longtime friend of the show. I have no reason to think that he wouldn't want to come on here.
Yeah, of course. But he does make these conjectures. And I do know that the Grand Canyon is also supposedly there's like some like different pyramid type stuff in there people are talking about. So I don't know 100%. Like I definitely don't pretend to know where everything began or didn't begin, but who knows?
Well, going back to temperamental little bitches, Brigham Young, another pro of Brigham Young is that, again, if you go into the old world aspects of stuff, one of those questions is, how come we don't make buildings like this anymore? And then it'll be a picture of this grand elaborate. Well, guess what? Brigham Young, right? Like he's the one that caused the Salt Lake City temple to be made, which is one of the last examples of a modern version of these impressive American buildings, right?
Well, I am going to tell you, like John Levi has done a lot of work on the Salt Lake Temple, not necessarily all the temples, but there are some really low level excavated four floors down underneath the ground of the temple. And I'm not saying it couldn't be done. I'm just saying maybe it was founded and he changed it up because I just have a hard time believing with the pictures that I've seen with horses and buggies and how heavy the granite slabs were that they were working with. I mean, maybe, but you know, I'm a conspiracy theorist, so there's that.
All right, well, let's get into the negative parts of Brigham Young. So polygamy, already mentioned, that comes up. I still don't know. I still don't understand truly what the downside of polygamy is outside of the inherent maybe imbalance of power and all that.
You know why bitches be crazy. Why would you want more than one? Like that sounds awful.
Well, okay. Plus, hear me out though.
To society. You're over 23.
But if you have 50 houses, how the hell else are you going to make sure that those 50 houses are, like house sitters are always around and they're keeping up and letting you know if a pipe burst or if something needs fixing? By putting a Duma in each one.
I think these women were pretty freaking self-sustaining, like for the most part. I think a lot of these women married Brigham Young after maybe the first 10. Let's give him 10. After the first 10, he's getting old and ugly and stuff. Like, come on. And he always had like a front fat pad, like not like a guy, like a beer belly, but he had like a girly belly, kind of like weirdly low. Like,
so not a dad bod.
He had a fupa. and so it's very unattractive. I'm just saying. And I don't foresee these women being like, oh, Brigham Young's so hot. No. After
he could have been like years, a notorious BIG, right? Where just his sheer like command, his like commanding authority was enough to get people over the fupa.
Or women couldn't do very much in the world at that time, and that gave her status because now remember he became the governor's wife.
Well, wouldn't prophet be more impressive than governor?
No, but also
like my man talks to God. What does your man do?
She gets both, and he only hits her up probably once a year because he's not making no babies. So like, if she don't like sex and she's kind of a prude, that might be the greatest gig ever. She gets a house. She's like, leave me alone. I'll take care of the pipes, whatever. Like breaks, I'll fix it. You stay away from my house, you know. But I think some of the women didn't feel very supported because his 19th wife sued him and tried to get money from him because he wasn't like helping with the kid. But like, I don't know.
I get the context, but there is something funny about an Exmo criticizing a Mormon for not having enough kids, and he only had 57. Like,
listen, I have 6 on my own. He's slacking. He's slacking.
he should have at least 300, according to you, right? Are you saying that the world would be better if there were 300 initial descendants of Brigham Young?
If they all had 10 kids each, or even 6, like that's a gaggle of kids, but we would all be completely messed up because like the DNA thing.
Well, so that's actually another interesting thing, and I guess
he's already marrying brothers and sisters and mother-in-laws. So,
well, this is topical because 23andMe, without getting on too much of a tangent, but like when the P Diddy thing, somehow that same day, or all these people stepped down from 23andMe, right? But 23andMe is now facing all sorts of financial troubles, and they're for sale. Right. Anyone that wants to buy 23andMe now can buy it, which is interesting because they have had a huge role in like criminal prosecution cases and finding all sorts of medical issues because they've got a monopoly on this data. Well,
okay.
But if you're a Mormon,
did I show you the genealogy stuff already? Did I?
Yeah, we talked about how deep they go into it, but one of my thinking was like, if you're legitimately concerned that your great-great-grandpa had 50 kids and you might be related to your wife, and even if Brigham Young was all about literal sister wives and you're not, what better way than to own 23andMe? And now you've got, like, maybe all Mormons will just get a special app so that when they hook up with someone or they match on the Mormon Tinder or whatever, it lets them know, like, oh, well, she's only like 3 removed. She's a distant cousin. And you're like, oh, thank God.
I'll tell you what. That should have happened because I'll tell you why. My family members settled this area, and my family members were all polygamists, and my family members ended up by 1950s having a high rate of certain ones of the family that were intermarried and not knowing it, and they had retarded kids. And I say that real, like not retarded, like to be funny or anything, like the medical wording of that. And the state came in and they were actually part of a huge eugenics program in Utah. Most people don't know about this, and they were taking kids from certain families, and I believe they knew about DNA even back then, and sterilizing them. And 2 of my cousins were removed from their home and sterilized at a very young age, and then given back like, oh, here you go. They're all better now. Fix that. Yeah. No, and they didn't tell the parents. They never told anybody.
They fell down on a pair of scissors. Yeah.
Yeah. These people found out later in life, like that they had been medically sterilized. One, it didn't matter so much because she was handicapped severely and would not have gotten married. But the other one, he wasn't. He just was super shy and kind of autistic. And so he could have had a normal life with a wife and everything. It was sad. He was on his own. He lived on his own the majority of his life. And it was pretty sad. So, yeah, there's a whole eugenics program that kicked off because of this. So.
Just like, I mean, you mentioned there is kind of a show about it, but also why not have a Mormon Tinder? And if you do have a Mormon Tinder, it also makes me wonder, like, you could gamify it so that if you see that there's a guy looking and he's only got 49 wives and you could be number 50, is there anything in Mormon polygamist culture where if you're wife number 10, you get like a free sandwich the next time you come or something?
No, but I will tell you this. The last wife and the first wife are the best gigs. But the last wife, I feel, is the better gig because, like, you're young and he's old. He can't be doing it all that much unless they got Viagra now. But back in the day, I mean, so, like, you probably got a much better life, right? Like, you're like just running around doing whatever. They don't got no DNA. She might have her own, what do you call it, gumwa, whatever, coming over to the house and got this pregnancy. Is he really going to deny it? Like, you don't know. You know, you could be
how common would you say that would be to non-Jack Mormons, like actual Mormons, the young wife, and she's got her own thing on the side?
I'm just saying, like, people be peopling, and I don't know. They shouldn't do it. It's against the rules. It's not what's good for the goose is not good for the gander.
Right, but if she shows up and she's like, I've got triplets, like, what 78-year-old dude's gonna be like, I couldn't have been me, I'm firing blanks? They'll be like, yeah, look how like virile I am. Look how much God loves this family.
He's gonna say that unless they come out black, unless they came out black or brown, he would be like, "Yeah, look at me, I'm the stud," like, look at this. And so I'm just saying, I'm saying that I think that happened more often than not. And also, going to 23andMe, how funny is it that maybe they used it exactly like how you said, but reverse technology, because they always say Joseph Smith's line was never traced out to any more kids. But if you own the DNA, ha ha ha, on
Right.
you. Right. So
Right, who's to even
knows?
say any of that? That
Yeah.
is another hilarious premise, like a Chappelle Show skit where it's a racist Mormon guy with 20 wives, but he has 200 black kids, but like no one wants to address the elephant in the room.
Then they'll just say, "Oh no, they were the brown kids." Because remember, the brown squaws you could marry. You could marry the squaws, but you couldn't marry the black people. The black people, we got to get into the black people. It's a whole thing. So the black people, he had a lot to say about black people. He was one racist dude, and that's what he's probably most well known for. So in a speech, he did say this. "But let me tell you further, let my seed mingle with the seed of Cain that brings the curse upon me and my generations, and we will reap the same rewards as Cain and have the same problems." So he also says, "What shall I tell you of the law of God in regard to the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes with the blood of Cain, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so." So he wasn't going. And actually, somebody asked him one time, "So when will this be removed, this curse?" And he said, "When God removes it. I don't have the authority to take it off. I didn't put it there. God did." So yeah, it's pretty bad. There was the one drop rule on holding the priesthood for a long time. The one drop rule was if in your lineage they even found one drop of African descent, that's it. You can't have it. Even if you're white as white can be.
Now,
There's
what
no
what African are we talking about here? Does this extend
Black.
into the Middle East?
Any
Like, are we
black.
just in West African?
The only thing they talk about is
Egyptian? What about Egyptian? That's in Africa, right?
they might say they are more brown. It depends on how dark you are. Honestly, if they got like the African type hair and black skin, you're nope.
What about an albino African? Would that be a loophole?
He did say a thing about this. He also talked about their curse wasn't only the curse of their skin, it was curse of a wide nose. So I don't know. That's his two things that he talks about it. So um a flat nose. A flat nose. That's what it was. Yeah. So, but like I said, he wasn't like that about the Lamanites, i.e., Native Americans. He says, "We are now going to the Lamanites, to whom we intend to be messengers. We will show them the consequences of their transgressions and the curse inflicted upon them and the darkness of their skin. We will intermarry with them. They will marry our young women, and we will make their young squaws wives. By this means, the Lord that curses their color shall be removed, and they shall be restored to pristine beauty."
Why did they get a pass? Is there explanation on why it's not the same?
Laman and Lemuel were the brothers in the Book of Mormon of Nephi. Nephi is like the main character in the Book of Mormon. And they didn't do what their father said, so they got a curse of brownness. Unlike the black people who were cursed in the War of Heaven for being fence sitters. They did not choose one side or the other in the War of Heaven against when Lucifer fell. They said, they just sat there and didn't know what to do. So God cursed them with the skin of blackness. It's different. It's a different curse, two different curses. So yeah, one was just not minding their dad, basically.
It's hard to keep track of all of these, and I'm not even becoming an expert. I just keep getting more information that makes me more confused over time. But there's also the curse of Cain, right? For like the whole murder thing. But then there's also the curse of Ham, which I've heard conflated with the curse of Cain. And this is when he went and he saw Noah in the tent and maybe did something to him. Maybe diddled his drunk dad.
They don't even talk about that. They don't even talk about that. They only talk about the war in heaven. And they only talk about that and the Nephi and the Lamanites. They don't even bring him up.
What's the Mormon explanation of the Old and New Testament?
I mean, well, you have to remember how the Mormons deal with the Bible. The Bible is only correct in as much it's translated correctly. So if they come in and find something they don't like, there's a whole Joseph Smith's translation of the Bible. So he goes through it with a fine tooth comb and's like, wrong again, red marks all over.
He's
So,
like
yeah.
20 something when he's doing this.
Yes. Yep. And so he goes in and just kind of conveniently makes whatever he doesn't like, not right. And so anytime you bring up the Bible, which I've done a lot with, I've always been I'm a free thinker and I was in debate. So I would go to the bishops and be like, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about Mother Teresa? And she was a nice lady and never did anything wrong. And she didn't have a husband. She going
Well,
to
she
hell. Like, what?
tortured people.
Well, I didn't know that then, but I'm talking about like your thoughts on like pristine people that never did anything bad and they never heard the Book of Mormon. What happens, and what if they never got married? And what if they're not a polygamist? And da 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 da. So I would ask these questions, but it was always like, don't worry about it. And we're going to get into another huge topic about don't worry about it, what Brigham Young did. So yeah. He had, his idea of God was not the God they say is God now. Have you heard this?
No, tell me about it.
So Brigham Young actually said that Adam is God. Our God is Adam.
I understand that because one of the unique parts of Mormonism, which I find absolutely fascinating, and actually there are some very early Christian thinking that did this, I think before the Reformation, but that God was truly a flesh and blood man, and it wasn't even an anomaly. It wasn't like God decided to be flesh and blood. It's that he was only able to be a God at all because he came from flesh and blood. And I think Mormonism is just an extension of that in a very literal sense.
Do you know though that he believes he's the angel Michael? He doesn't believe that he's like God, like God came into Adam, God. He says, I can't find the quote right offhand, but he says basically that Adam is from another planet and he came here with one of his many wives. And that's how it happened. And that he banged Mary. There's no none of the baloney about
she didn't get banged by a pigeon.
And no Holy Spirit did it. Adam did the deed, i.e. Michael. And when you go through the temple, part of getting your new name, you'll see it happen in heaven. Michael will come down and he will become Adam in the ceremony. And so they say they've taken all this Adam God doctrine out. However, it still was in the temple ceremony when I went. So that was far long after. So I'm like, wait a minute, what? And then Spencer W. Kimball, he came out specifically and said, we are not to worry about this and who God is and who God isn't. You guys just leave it alone. And that's that. And don't worry about it. Don't worry about that anymore. And so he comes out and basically says everything Brigham Young preached his whole life was BS. And so it's kind of a mess for them because they can't get away from that. Like what do you do to fix that? You know what I mean? It's bad.
And is this is fairly new to me, the Adam God idea here, and specifically Michael. So this is unique to the planet Earth, right? Michael gets sent to Earth, and this is where all this takes place. Mm-hmm. So on another planet, is it a different angel that got sent there, and it's not Adam? It's Steve.
Probably. Yeah, because he also believes this and said this: angels are those beings who have been on earth like this and have passed through the same ordeals we are going through. So they weren't like God's heavenly hosts. They're just like spirits or whatever that died. They have kept their first estate far enough to preserve themselves in the priesthood. They did not so violate the law of the priesthood and condemn themselves to sin against the Holy Ghost to be lost. They are not crowned with the celestial ones or celestial glory. They are persons who have lived here on earth, but did not make it and magnify the priesthood in the highest degree that others have done who have become gods and even sons of gods. So you have to know they call God Elohim but not with Brigham Young. And that's a title, and Elohim's like a lot of gods, but like this is the name they chose for God. So he also says about like, who can tell us of the inhabitants of this planet that shines in the evening called the moon? When you inquire about this, you have learned are as ignorant in regard to them as ignorant of their fathers. So it is in the regard of the inhabitants of the sun. Do you think it is inhabited? I say so. No question of it. It was not made in vain. It was made to give light to those who dwell upon it and other planets. And so will this earth when it is celestialized. So that kind of helps. They believe there's lots of planets and lots of people and lots of this has been done before. Like even in the temple, Lucifer comes and God's like, yo, what are you doing with the apple crap? Like, what? Why would you do this? And he says, I'm just doing what we've done in other worlds. So they have this really big concept of like many places are inhabited.
Do they all have? Does every planet have apples?
I mean, if we're even talking about an apple, they do believe that Jesus was, created by banging. I also wonder about that, but it doesn't say anything about that.
Created by what?
I mean, there's those people that believe Lucifer, the whole, other seed, twin seed thing. Sometimes I wonder if the church believes that because of all the banging always going on, like that the twins were, yeah, lots of banging and all the kids.
So the other, I guess, controversial thing, we've touched on most of them except for the Mountain Meadows Massacre, 1857, I think, and that this one in particular, it wasn't just like Native Americans and militiamen and stuff dying. It was women and children, like a large number of women and children, just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So
John D. Lee was the leader of this massacre, but John D. Lee was Brigham Young's adopted son. So you have to know that. So he was the one that basically took the fall, but he kind of spoke out a little bit there right before they killed him because he was like, hey, this wasn't just me, And so basically what they were doing is they were pissed off because people were going through their territory. And these were other people coming west. And this was the Fancher party. And these people were not Mormon. They didn't have permission. There was a lot of tension. There was this war between the Mormons and America kind of, during this time. There was a lot of heat on Utah and they were pushing them and pushing them. Remember, we were not supposed to be a state here. We were supposed to be Mexico. So everybody's pretty pissed off that this is all occurring and now they have to play with the rules again because they don't want to build another temple of land.
It's just funny to me because there's Mormons somewhere in Utah during this and like, these damn Americans, get out of Mexico. Mexico's for the Mexicans.
Yeah, they were so upset because they had already lost. Think of how many temples they'd started and lost. Think of how many places they'd been ran out of. So, but maybe if they quit banging everybody's wives, I mean, people would not be upset and let them stay, but whatever, not mine to decide. But I will tell you, so there was heat and Brigham Young either gave the order or he definitely defended what happened afterward. There's controversy on whether he gave the order to execute these people, but the dirty part was he used the Native Americans that he built this big like relationship with, like they're intermarrying. Jacob Hamblin is like preaching the word to these people. Like this is a whole thing. They're trying to bring these people into the fold. And then they're like, they did it.
Well, yeah, because it's like, well, look at this white and delightsome skin. God would never have me do anything wrong. I mean, the sin is right there on the pigment, right? You can tell they're the bad ones.
Do you know what day it happened? Just for funsies, as a conspiracy theorist, I thought I'd share.
I mean, I can guess, but what day?
Take a guess.
May 1st?
First. September 11th,
1854.
Okay. So, or 1857.
Something else happened that day. I can never remember what it was, though.
So I will tell you, all the men and women were murdered, 120 men, women, and children. Any child under 8 was taken as a slave. They kept those kids and they kept their stuff. And they never made any, like, if you're sorry for something and you're like, oh, dang, maybe we did a wrong thing. Let's give these kids back to the people that should have them and like their money. No, they didn't do that.
When you say slave, though, are we talking like legitimate indentured servitude? They live in slave quarters, or are they just now adopted and part of the family and have to do regular old family chores?
Well, for like 4 to 6 years, maybe regular chores, and then they get banged, right? Like shit, they're gonna be the next wife. You know it for sure. You know, if they're girls.
I mean, at least those ones will be less likely to be incestual.
Yeah, maybe some of us got out of it, but like I'm just saying it's pretty bad. Like he could have made a lot of things right if he wanted to make it right and he felt so bad, which he didn't. He totally 100% defended what they did. And so instead of saying, oops, my bad, we thought they were scary people coming to attack us, they could have got out of that with like a sorry, a shitty sorry, right? Like, oopsie. And then here's the kids.
Just
Like,
claim
here's
a
the
like
kid.
castle doctrine. We were just standing our ground.
Yeah, they could have done that and give at least the kids back, even if they kept their money, which they did. And it was kind of funny. One of the Brighamites that were involved in this was like, hey, they had a lot of money. Can I like have some of the money? And Brigham Young was like, hell no, give me the money. Shut up and get out of
Yeah,
here.
well, so that's another, I think, interesting dynamic in this particular massacre, right? There was, again, I read ahead a little bit, but there was one particular, like the ones that they attacked in the massacre was called the Fancher Baker wagon train. And that this was essentially that were just people that were moving their families to California. Full stop. That was the main reason that they were even going through Utah, is that Utah just happened to be in the way of them getting over to California, right? And this is basically less than a decade after the gold rush, which was 1849. So this is 1857. So reasonably, these are people that heard about these riches in California. They're going to get over to California, get in on some of these riches. And part of that, it's almost like if you had an entire neighborhood and like a full neighborhood packed up U-Hauls and put all their stuff in the U-Hauls and they're driving through the worst part of town. Now, all of a sudden, there's a practical reason to assault these people and take their stuff because they got stuff and you don't got stuff. And they've conveniently put all their things together in a nice little U-Haul for you. So if you just kill them and take their U-Haul, now you've got their stuff, right? So it does seem like, aside from the tone of the time, and aside from any tensions that might have built up, you're also like, damn, I'm poor. Look at those people that just drove through town that have all this livestock and they got all these clothes and all these resources. Sure would be a shame if something happened to them and we just inherited all their stuff. It almost seems that would be the bigger driving dynamic.
What if they gave him a chance? This is my thoughts on it, is like, what if they went up to them and were like, because this seems more probable, right? Like, yo, you got to pay if you want to pass because we don't even like you. Because in the Mormon temple ceremony back in the day, they would say things like Methodists and all these people were like the devil, like the literal devil, like they hated other like Baptists and Methodists and all these things. So I could see them being like, oh, you want safe passage, do you? Like pirates, you know? Well, that's going to cost you some money. And I could see these people, I think they were coming, where were they coming from? Was it Texas? It was somewhere like
Arkansas.
that. Okay, so if these are hillbillies, they probably were like, suck my, you know what? And so they probably were like, no, get out of here. I'm not giving you shit. Get your Mormon ass out of here. And then they sent the people on them, you know, like I could see it. I could totally see it because, I mean, I don't think they just go balls to the walls and kill them straight out the gate. Maybe they didn't want to play their game.
Maybe, but also they're already being persecuted by the federal government. So you see this train of people with all these resources. The other thing is like, oh, they're sending resources to our enemies for this next big strike. So this is also your one chance to preemptively attack, and I guess a good offense is the best defense. And I don't know that's the inverse of the way that you say it, but that's kind of how they would go about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a dangerous time all the way around because they wanted polygamy to end, and that was a fact. Like the state was not being they were being persecuted simply because of the polygamy thing. And they were, Brigham Young wasn't wanting to end that anytime soon. So, I mean, he was so staunch on the polygamy deal that he was like, no, it's happening. We're continuing. I don't give a shit. Like, whatever you want to do to us. And it didn't end in his time. It didn't end until he passed. And so it does make you question, like, yeah, maybe he was on high alert. Maybe it was just that. I mean, they had their own armies, I mean, the Mormon armies were seriously big,
Well, there's another aspect to this which makes it even more nefarious, and I guess this is like the dirtiest part of it. But that leading up to this massacre, it wasn't a massacre in that two sides went and fought each other and one side just happened to win. It was that John D. Lee, Brigham Young's son, one of his many 57 kids, but one of his sons, he goes up to the wagon train with a white flag of truce and basically says, look, we're going to give you safe passage. Follow me. We're on your cause. We're all men of God here. Like, you can trust us. But just to not freak out our women and children, please disarm yourselves. Give us all your guns, all your weapons, so that as we give you this safe passage, we don't feel at threat. And as soon as they give them all of their guns, then they attack and kill them all. So it was sort of done under like false pretenses.
It's because I will tell you, they don't, okay, this is kind of like, they don't believe that, this is a quote from Brigham Young about his own people. Okay, this is about his own people. This will put you in the mindset of the orders he gives. This is loving your neighbor as ourselves. If he needs help, help him. And if he wants salvation and it is necessary to spill his blood on the earth in order that he may be saved, spill it. So he was not playing around with even his own people, let alone these people. And you have to understand that this continues today in the FLDS. Whereas they believe we are Goyim, much as the Jewish tradition. They don't call it that, but we are damned. We, as normal people, not just Exmos. No. You. Anybody.
Well, not me. I'm a high-ranking Mason, so I'm actually transcendent.
No, you've heard the word because you had a Mormon friend. You had an option to listen, and you didn't. So you're damned.
Oh, I'm higher level than that, though. I'm way, way above that. That's beneath me.
Well, they don't think so, but. So
because they're not high up enough. I know how this works.
I know. They got to get to the 95th degree or 96th.
Oh, that's cute. 95th. I'm on the 130th, but whatever.
Yeah, there you go. And so these people would do this basically because they're nothing. They are cattle to them. They mean nothing to them. They're not Mormon. And the reason why they kept the kids under the age of 8 is because the age of 8 is the age that we as Mormons believe you are now able to be acceptable of your own sins. It's when you get baptized, it's the age you know better, and so that's why they killed the 8-year-olds and left the rest. So the other kids were deemed still innocent, so they couldn't shed their blood. But they have no qualms. And I don't think that it mattered. I mean, you heard what he said about his own wives, like stick a javelin in her, like whatever, with clean hands, man. So he's not going to care about these stupid people. He doesn't care about these stupid people. And he doesn't. I mean, it's obvious that he doesn't,
I'm just imagining like you're married to Brigham Young and he's like so distracted and you're like, honey, what are you working on over there? You've been so infatuated in this, and you just peek over his shoulder and you just see him writing about like stabbing my wife with a javelin with clean hands. Like, oh, I think I'm going to go and do the laundry for a third time here. Would you like a sandwich, a foot rub, anything?
You would definitely be on red alert for sure. And there's a lot of people that, it just so happened if they did like you enough, right? Like maybe a certain wife would go tell on her husband. This really happened. The Anderson party in Cedar City. She told on her husband for cheating on her one too many times. Well, the Mormons are pretty lax on the guys. Remember how I told you I had the uncle that got excommunicated? It was because he slept with women before he got married to him. And it happened a bunch and he kept getting it. He just kept coming back. They'll baptize you again in a year or something. And I know he had the second anointing. So I know why they just kept going like, okay, whatever. He got married like 8 or 9 times. I can't even remember. But like this kept happening with him. And I think that's how they usually address it with men. They don't go before the council, but a woman, if she cheats, she's going to go before a council. Or if she does something bad, she's going to have to pay the price. Whereas a man, it's not the same. So I find it funny in this one case, this Anderson case, she's like, yeah, he's cheating on me. And they cut his head. They slit his throat. They blood atoned him. And he freaking dressed up. He like put on the clothes. He's like, yep, it's today. I know I'm just a bad guy. So he like kneels down in by the hole, dug the hole and was like, okay, let's get it done. Let's slice it up.
Last words, it was still worth it.
Oh my gosh. And I'm like, this guy either really loved the girl he did it with or really loved his wife and felt bad. I don't know which, but like, I don't know how they decide in those cases. Like maybe the wife was hot and they were like, that one needs to be a widow. Right? Like,
yeah, like the second they chop his head, the guy holding the bloody knife is like, so I heard you're single.
Like, come on over and have dinner sometime. I heard you do some great laundry. You would be an asset in our society. But it's kind of funny to me that I'm like, okay, why would they punish this guy? And Brigham Young had a brothel. I don't know if people know this. 2 things that were weird about Brigham Young. Number 1, he owned a brothel. And number 2, which was on the way DL, he had a son that dressed up as a let me find the photo, as a trans, like as a girl, as a chick. I have the photo.
That's awesome. So there was already Kamala voters even in the early 19th century.
Yeah, apparently we are a red state, but no.
Very progressive.
So Brigham Young's son, Brigham Morris Young, son of Brigham Young, dressed up as Madame Petrini in 1887 and said that Miss Bridget McCarthy, a fine Irish girl, showed up to the Christmas ball and sang a song. It was his kid. It was his son.
Now, is that son potentially going to become one of the polygamist wives of another Mormon out there?
Dude, it's supposed to be anti-homo all the way, no homo, like in the Mormon church. I don't know what was going on there. When I found that today, I was like, what? Because they are like, Brigham Young University got in deep trouble for trying to like beat the gay out of people and stuff and like doing all kinds of weird things in BYU University. And I'm like, okay, why was this okay back in the day? I don't understand. I don't care. I mean, you know me, whatever you want to do, go do that if you're 18. But like, I don't get it. They're beating people up over it later.
I mean, let's just say in a game of numbers, and I know that you laugh at his mere 57 children or whatever, but just a game of numbers.
Because I got one. I got one.
That's what I'm gonna say. If you've got 57, you're gonna have a few outliers, right? Guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he definitely did. But I'm shocked that they let it go on, and it wasn't like this is the outcast bad kid. Let's kill him.
We'll just have one of the Native Americans kill him and blame it on them.
Exactly. Like he said, literally, I have a Bowie knife for everyone that leaves the church, and showed this big knife at one of his conferences. Like, I mean, you'd be scared. Like, so how does this kid just get away with it? I'm not sure. I don't know. It's a fascination to me, but he did, and they were proud of it. There's pictures of it. There's a photo of him all dressed in.
Now, I'm talking to an exmo here. How accurate is this? Because it sounds like the kind of story that someone would plant retroactively to be like, haha, you've got a gay kid.
There was a letter confirming it, and also it was in the Salt Lake Herald, and the photo was in the Salt Lake Herald, which is...
Was this a letter from Heidi to Heidi?
No, this is actually in the Deseret News. And in 1902, the Deseret News reported that he had even given a drag performance during the birthday celebration of the president, Lorenzo Snow, at that time. And there's like this was in the paper. So I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe it was okay because he was no homo and just dressing up. Maybe he was just doing the dress up. But I want people to know I love gay people and I don't care. If you're over 18 and you want to do whatever you want to do, freaky stuff, go ahead. I don't care. Like, I got a gay kid, so don't come at me.
I had to look this up. This is really interesting. I've never heard this before. And just by Googling it, there's a whole bunch of pro-Mormon resources that are like, this has never been proven. This is all BS. But then Snopes, which we all know is the absolute beacon of truth because they're the ones in charge of debunking everything on social media. But Snopes has a fact check on this, and it says, was one of Brigham Young's son a drag queen? Subtitle, in the 1900s, a cisgender straight men were most likely to give drag performances for comedic or shock value. And then it rates it as true because on a technicality, there is absolutely a picture of Brigham Morris Young dressed up as Madame
not cute.
Petrini.
Well, send it.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So
it's rough. That's what I'm saying.
It's not for your gaze. I just have to say this is not for the female gaze. Brigham Morris Young dressed up as an old lady.
I'm gonna send it to you because I find it hilarious. Because look at the elbow, bro. You can totally tell it's a dude. Like
the article says Brigham Morris Young shows himself to be a prime entertainer that exhibits a good falsetto voice and ability to sustain a female character. He also did impersonations of Chinese people and gibbered away in a lingo that sounded like the vernacular of the Celestials. So he gets up on stage dressed like a woman, does a vaudeville act, starts doing impressions of Chinese people by I'm sure he did racist eye things, and then he talks in tongues, and then he's like, we call that the aristocrats, and everyone claps, and he gets off stage.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. It all seemed a little wild to me when I found it because I, like you, had never heard this before. I've heard a lot of things about Brigham Young, and I actually went to a Russian Google to find this and to make sure because I was like, what the earth? This is not true. And that's where I found the photo. I was like, wow, okay, I guess it's true, whatever. And
it is true. It's absolutely true that he has a son. Although Brigham Young died in 1877 and this happened in 1902. So this was 25 years after his dad died. So there's no real way to know what his reaction might have been to this.
It could have been also acceptable, like you said, because it was acting. So whatever. I mean, I don't know, but they've been in a lot of trouble.
If you're a rich elite white man, specifically on the West Coast in the early 20th or late 19th century, then this was one of the more normal things that you probably could have done was to dress up like a woman in front of all your other men people, because everything was a men's club back then. Like women weren't allowed to really go out of the house or know other men or have conversations, right?
We'll still be doing this at Bohemian Grove.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is basically because Bohemian Grove, I think, is 1880s. So Bohemian Grove, they would have been doing drag shows way before this thing with Brigham Young's son.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't know. I think it's whatever. Like in my personal opinion, as long as you're not forcing it on your kid and they don't want to do it or whatever, if they're choosing to do whatever they choose to do, that's fine. And especially if they're over 18, like let them live. Like it is what it is. Like you can't do anything about it. So.
Okay, new reality show idea: RuPaul's Drag Race Salt Lake City Mormon Edition.
Mormon edition,
and it's all descendants of Brigham Young competing against each other.
Oh my gosh! Well, we all are anyway, right? I mean, it's like half and half. It's like Joseph's descendants and Brigham's descendants, and that's all.
So if I was a descendant of Brigham Young, and I was going to be a drag queen on RuPaul's Drag Race, my name would be Meadows Massacre. I feel like that would be the absolute perfect Mormon drag queen name.
What about Bowie Knife?
Maybe, although that kind of conjures Crocodile Dundee to me.
Javelin.
Javelin would be a good one.
Javelin's a good one because he did say he would stick a javelin through anybody. He didn't care. And I do find it like fantastically amazing that they go towards this guy. And I think it happened because he ruled with a fist, but that's what they needed because everything was so foobarred after Joseph Smith died. Because he was just like a happy guy, like doo-doo-doo, like I'm so happy, charismatic, but he didn't arrange anything in case, right? He never said for sure, like, hey, this is the one. And so, of course, if you're lost sheep looking for a king, you know, it's their own fault. They all sustained him. So
I found Morris Young's wiki page, and there's actually more to this. All right. So in 1885, in 1883, Young, the drag queen Young, gets married to the daughter of Lorenzo Snow, who Lorenzo Snow was the 5th president of the LDS Church. So he marries, he keeps it kind of like high up in the upper class, right? But it says here, in 1885, Young and his wife and their children returned from serving a second mission in Hawaii, and upon returning to Utah, Young begins performing in drag and cross-dressing as a singer under the pseudonym Madame Petrini. This was not a one-off. It says that Young performed as Petrini in North and Central Utah between 1885 to the 1900s.
wow.
He could produce a convincing falsetto, and many of the audience did not realize Petrini was Young. So he didn't show up and like, oh wow, we're gonna see this guy dressing up like a woman and doing a performance.
Show
He
that
actually
photo. He's not that attractive. This is crazy. That
again,
photo,
this is not for your gaze, so I feel like you're not qualified to really talk on this.
I'm saying
Let's
that
see.
one's not.
And
Yeah,
we're not live,
I
so we
sent
won't be
you
able to get
one.
any live
Yeah.
feedback. But yeah, if anyone's watching, if you're
Let
not
us know.
listening and you're watching, yeah, give us a out of 10 rating. Where are we
It's
at here?
I
Out of
feel
10, I don't know. I'd say a strong
He
2.
looks like a dude, man. He's a
A strong
dude.
2.
I mean, look at that face and those arms. He's holding the dress up because his lungs are like swimmer, or his arms are swimmer arms, like really super long arms with the crazy elbows. But yeah, I don't know. That's crazy.
Do you think it
I
stopped
mean-
there? Do you think he just showed up at like performance and did singing, or do you think that he was picking people up
He
at
wanted to
the
be a
Mormon
wife.
bars? He wanted to be a midwife.
He was like, I'm being left out. I want to be one of the 55 wives of Lorenzo. Geesh. I don't know. It's looked down upon, but we all know what secret societies keep secrets. So who knows?
Dicks, secret dicks. That's the whole secret.
Yeah, there you go.
They're all
That's
wearing
what's up.
dresses.
I mean, that's what they do. They make you wear a dress. If you make it big and you've seen people in a dress, you're like, oh, that's how they made it. We know.
You're
that.
not wrong. In fact, man, I
know.
can't remember the exact name of it. It's like Kappa Phi Beta or something. I just made that up. But there's a secret society of people in Wall Street, and their initiation rituals that you have to show up at this huge fancy dinner, but you have to wear a full-on evening gown, makeup, diamond necklace, like you have to go all out as if you were legitimately a rich socialite woman, and they basically berate you, and you kind of get it's initiation / humiliation ritual, right?
So
Kind
I
of
have
the
to
same way
ask
that
you. You've been through all the things. Would you do it for another degree?
what, put on a dress for another fancy
Like
ring
the
and a
whole
hat?
deal.
Yeah.
The whole deal. Yeah.
Well, what's the whole? Let's not mince words here. Is someone penetrating me? Is that what we're saying? The whole deal?
No, just fancy dress.
Yeah, why not? Why
Like
not
they
dress
said.
up? I'm progressive. I'm voting for Kamala.
Oh, yeah. That's so funny. I'm like, huh. I mean,
I've already killed 6 children and uncountable goats. So if you say I got to put a dress on to get my next degree, that's nothing. Like there's blood all over my hands at this point.
You're like, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. Just give me a new hat. I want another hat. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no.
Do I get to keep the dress? That's what I'm worried about.
Right. Well, are they going to call upon it again? Like, hey, Melissa needs to show up at the next party too. Like, if Melissa kept having to show up, that would be sucky. But
well,
whatever.
hear me out. I just want to say that there is a non-zero chance that if there was a prominent Mormon husband out there, already has 50 wives, right? He's like approaching the 80s, doesn't see well, doesn't hear well. Why not dress up and sneak your way into that family and just get a free house?
Well, they probably kept their garments on at all times back then too. So like,
what would he know? You could just swap out like a prison pee, right? You could just wrap a warm towel in a bag and put that under your dress and convince the 80-year-old, husband. Yeah.
It could happen.
What the hell would he know?
Jeez. Yeah, no kidding. But they all didn't get houses all the time. Sometimes they had to share. So that's kind of, But who knows? Whatever. I could see it. That's strange. I don't know. I mean, Brigham had enough problems with the ones he had. I mean, that's what you get for marrying your mother-in-law. Just saying.
I don't know if I see the big taboo about your mother-in-law. Your mother, yeah. Your sister, yeah. But mother-in-law, especially if her daughter is sterile or her uterus exploded and now she can't put out anymore, what wrong would be to marry the mother? If anything, it would be like, girl, I love you so much. I want your family to continue.
You have to think about it like he's banging my mom today. Today is
but if she's 15, what? The mom's 30? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that gets sloppy. Same thing with sisters. And he's all about that. He didn't care.
No, this could work, right? If you wanted to get rid of the possible incestuous offspring, if you did bang 3 different sisters, then you just have their children fight to the death.
Oh, there you go. That's probably what they did.
Right?
Or they branched off into their own. They're like, there's too many of us. You guys got to go over in that part of the city and this part of the city. And then, no talking to each other.
Okay, here some more general questions, just because I'm still getting my bearings. You were mentioning that, you'll go to hell if you don't do certain things. Is this a permanent hell, or can you atone after a while? Do they just kind of put you on the burner for a few thousand years and then they check on you to see if you're ready to come out of the oven, or are you just in there forever?
Well, I think if you're like me and you left the church and you had the full knowledge, you're probably in there forever. If you're not and you just didn't have the knowledge at all and you never got talked to about anything, they kind of say you go in a waiting room and that you're waiting there until somebody does your work for you. So you hope upon hope that somebody in the 23andMe zone like got your name and put it in the temple stuff and that you can get your temple stuff done. So
okay, so almost like a purgatory, yes. So, and I know that this is a question I'm talking to an Exmo. I have to remind myself, this is an Exmo here. She is trying to steer me away from the true path. But couldn't you, as an Exmo, you show up to whatever the Mormon equivalent of the pearly gates is, and St. Peter's like, nope, you go in this line. But couldn't you make the argument that, well, it's not my fault that the divine message never made its way to me because it was all being said through these infallible prophets on earth. And it's not my fault for not believing. It's their fault for not conveying the message the way that God wanted me to understand it.
Well, I mean, they might listen, but I don't know, according to the Bowie knife statement, that would work because he literally says,
like, we believe you. We're still going to have to put this javelin through you. It's not personal.
He's like, we got to slit your throat right now. And then if you die before you get your throat slit, you really can't atone without the shedding of your own blood, right? Because he says, well, you love your brothers and sisters likewise when they have committed a sin that cannot be atoned for without the shedding of blood, their own blood. Will you love a man or woman enough to shed their blood? These are quotes from Brigham Young. So I don't know if you can actually go back from that, because he also says, I've known a great many men who left the church for whom there is no chance whatever for exaltation unless their blood has been spilled. It would have been better for them to spill their blood. The wickedness and ignorance of nations forbid this principle in full force, but the time will come when the law of God will be in full force. So he's saying no. I don't know.
I guess modern times would be different than older times, but second anointing basically goes back to Joseph Smith's time, right? Like 1840s or something. So this is the second anointing has kind of always been around since Mormonism has been around in a big way. But in the 1840s, if they didn't have great record keeping, let's say that you get caught doing something you're not supposed to. They're like, oh, we're going to have to stick a javelin through you now. We're going to have to do this horrible thing to you. Could you just be like, oh, but you don't understand, 800 miles away in that direction, I got second anointed. You can't do this to me. Do they just put you in a holding cell and send off a messenger to confirm that you were second anointed? Is there a special handshake? Can you do like a funny little dance? And now they're like, oh,
actually super good record keepers. I will tell you that the historical records, for the whole reason why they made a Batman cave for their genealogy records, is because they are that good. And the reason why they are that good is because they keep intricate detail of this stuff. Like even for Joseph Smith's first historical records on the second anointing, it's like September 28th, 1843. Like, boom, they know it. They have it. So I don't know. I think it would be in the records. I mean, they have everything, and especially now.
So very much like the Catholic Church, they're just a religious intelligence agency.
Yeah. I mean, they know. They got a whole Batman cave, 3 billion.
If you could have access to either the Vatican archives or the Mormon archives, which one do you think would have the most secrets?
The Vatican.
So the Vatican still are better than the Mormons then?
They're older. Yeah, I would say so, because the Mormons are going to have the Mormon secrets, but I don't know how many other secrets they care about, right? They're focused only on one, whereas the Catholics are like, we better have all the secrets. We got to put this stuff away. Nobody can know about any of this. It's bad, so that's my guess. I've been to the Vatican. It's really pretty.
And I think you told me last time that we did a show that there's now a Mormon temple that's right outside the Vatican, and you don't just get to put up a temple outside, not in the Vatican City, but it's close enough that if you're doing a tour, you can hit them both in the same day, right? And you don't get to put that up unless you at least have a little bit of buy-in from the Catholics, or the Pope in particular.
I think the current Pope for the Catholic Church is under a ton of scrutiny for a lot of things. And I think he's just like, fuck it. Like, he doesn't care.
Oh, yeah.
He does not care. Like, I'm sorry. He doesn't care. Yeah. They've all cared before this one. So
he is the Kamala of popes, for sure. There
like, is let it all come. Yeah.
If you believe in infinite dimensions and realities, then there is a reality in which the Catholic Church combines with the Mormon Church. And at that point, that's the biggest intelligence organization on the planet.
I think that's already happened. I think they're all part of the one world order. Look at all their CIA and FBI connections, and plus them working together so closely and all of their ties. And then you look at their holdings, look at the money. Follow the money.
Right. But I mean, maybe this is just all surface level stuff for normies, but it does seem like there's one major incompatible, or more than one, but baptisms, they completely look at those different. Transubstantiation and, eating the flesh and the blood. That's kind of I've always understood that as there's no wiggle room there. If you're Catholic and you don't believe in transubstantiation, then you're not really Catholic.
The Mormons do the whole thing. They do.
But they're eating Adam. They're not eating the real God, right?
Well, they took it back. Remember?
Right.
So who knows at this point, right? Like, I mean, in Joseph Smith's time, I think the showing of Adonai on his different things, like obviously he had some knowledge there about the Adam God theory, because if you search back far enough into different things, you'll find some stuff about Adam and Adamite, like all this connects together.
Are you going to tell me Adam was dressing up like a woman too?
I mean, no, I don't think that, but I just think that Joseph was definitely in on a more hermetic philosophy of things. He had a really good friend named Luman Walters that he was learning all kinds of stuff from. And this guy was a doctor. He just came back from Europe. And funny enough, guess where he just came back from when he met Joseph Smith? France. And he came back godless heathen, that wasn't like he was before, believing in strange things, and they don't go into it. And I'm like, Shh, there's your link. There's your link right there, people. But like, I just think that, and I find his name hysterically funny. Like, is this a Mandela effect? Like, his name is Lumen, like Lightbringer. Good. Okay, he's a real person. I've looked him up and done a bunch of research on him, but I really do believe this is where his Hermetic studies started, and then he started learning from a Jewish guy all these things about Hebrew and Kabbalah, and they don't want to get into this. They say it didn't happen, but it did. And so the guy's name's in there, like we can look it up, but I just am like, he was Hermetic in nature, is what I'm saying. So him and Brigham and his early followers, I believe, were going one way. And then when this state became a state and they said, quit messing around with this stupid crap, or we're not going to let you be a state. And we're going to take all your money and all this stuff. Then the president of the church, I believe it was Lorenzo Snow, but don't quote me on it. I think he was like, cut it out. Like, you guys cut it out. Like, take it underground, make them your hose. Like, I think that they were just like, stop what you're doing. We made this sugar factory. We're helping with the railroad. Like, we need to make money. And it became a corporatization where Joseph Smith and Brigham Young really weren't about that. I think Brigham might have been in his later years, but not at first, I don't know. He was part of the railroad, so maybe he was all along, but who knows? What if he was CIA to begin with type of thing and just sent out west to start the railroad? Who knows?
Would have been a little early for the CIA, but yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like, what if he was already bought and paid for? He did become the governor, like easy peasy, but he wasn't giving up those women. I'll tell you that right now. So until he died, they kept it going, and everybody was like, yep, Adam's God, and that's okay. And all the women, and then he dies and they were like, forget it all. Go backward. We believe in the other God. And so I'm like, you guys don't even know what you believe. That's why you look so shady. I mean,
it probably gets
Catholics
confusing.
never change. Yeah,
well,
that's
the one thing. Well, the Catholics, and I've just described this a few times, so give the short version, is that it's just like legal precedent. The Catholic Church is like the U.S. Supreme Court, where every time they make a decision, they write it down, they document it, and then someone 800 years later will be like, oh, no, we've already decided what happens on this. Look, here's an example of a papal bull that says when A plus B, got to have C, and that's how this goes. And unless you want to challenge this authority, which is a long process, we just go on this legal religious precedent. So in that case, the Catholic Church has one advantage, in that they can be like, this is how it's always been done. Look, here's proof it's been done like this for 1,000 years. In Mormonism, it's almost like a different pro and con, where they can be like, oh, no, it's always been like that. Trust me. And you're like, no, you can't look at what we wrote down 2 years ago, because that's gone now. Now you just have this version, which is new, which I think is interesting, because you can constantly make sure that you're compatible with whatever the latest trends and zeitgeist are. Yep. And you don't necessarily have to explain all these weird decisions that were made hundreds of years ago. But also now when people are like, well, show me the receipts is trust me, bro. That's like the Mormon receipt, right?
Trust me, bro, gets people into trouble too. Because the more I study about, they've even called it celestial masonry themselves. This is what the Mormons call it, celestial masonry. So I'm telling you this, like all of their stuff that they get to, once they get to a certain point, kind of like the Masons, they open up the vault and go, here you go. Right. And before that, it's all trust me, bro. And then you get to the like next level, the second anointing stuff or whatever. But I'll tell you, whatever they're telling them, some people go batshit crazy as soon as they learn about it, because then they really do start slitting people's throats. Like, this has been an ongoing thing. The Vallow case, which is really popular right now. She went crazy and her kids are dead. We got Under the Banner of Heaven. They went crazy and blood sacrifice slit her throat of the wife. And I've talked to this guy, the survivor. Like, you get to a certain level on all of this, and all these people get real weird. So what the hell are they telling them at that level that makes some people just break apart mentally, like they literally can't.
Well, I mean, this all really makes me just think of blood magic and sex magic, and those two things are combined with knives and stabbing.
Magic.
And goetic magic, but because I've been on like a true crime kick lately, but people that die by the knife, those tend to be crimes of like sexual passion or some kind of sexual element to it, and which in my occult mind I'd be like, okay, well, sex and blood magic kind of the same thing. Like even Crowley said that, you know, sexual fluids, he named them different types of blood because
I read the Saturni Fraternis whatever book. Don't touch their papers. Good advice.
If you can get them peeled apart from each other, don't touch them.
So gross. Yeah. Agreed.
Well,
yes.
And speaking about magic, here's another seems like a contentious point, because I tried searching it. I found different varying opinions. And then when I asked ChatGPT, which I don't recommend, you don't go to ChatGPT to ask about facts because it just spits out whatever makes sense. But I asked ChatGPT, did Brigham Young wear a blood amulet? And if so, did he believe in magic? Well, here's the ChatGPT response. There is a myth that Brigham Young wore a blood amulet. However, there is no credible historical evidence that Brigham Young ever possessed or used a blood amulet. So then you just go in. Yeah, well, not only do they have it, there's pictures of him wearing it. There's pictures of the amulet. There's documentation on where he got it. Apparently he got, and I don't know how true any of this is, but a guy named Thomas Brown and Captain Cook in the 1700s, and it gets passed down to a pioneer family, the Browns, and then Browns give it to Young. So it's got this long back history. It's not just any old blood amulet. It's a blood amulet that's been around for centuries and has been passed down from generation to generation, and that this is what he wore in a battle or when he was traveling to keep himself safe.
Yeah, there's tons of pictures of this. And let alone, I want to do a whole episode on like the magical world of Mormons, because it's much like Harry Potter. And by the way, they love Harry Potter and Star Wars and Star Trek, so it makes complete sense. But yeah, all these things and canes. He possessed a cane as well that had Joseph Smith's hair from his death braided into the knob of the cane, and then it was made from. They dug him up like multiple times, and they dug up Joseph Smith and made a new coffin every time, and then made canes out of the dirty, juicy, grody coffin. And gave them to one was to Brigham Young. They gave them to a bunch of them. There's pictures of them. There's pictures of these canes. So there's all kinds of weird stuff. It gets weirder and weirder. The more I dive into it, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, I was a Mormon for so long. Why do I not know none of this? But now I do, and it's occulted. Yeah.
Well, when you're growing up Mormon, you're learning about all this. Was there any impression on you on like, who do you care more about, Joseph Smith or Brigham Young? Are they equals? Is Joseph Smith higher than Brigham Young?
Well, whoever's the current prophet, there's songs and everything. Follow the prophet, follow the prophet. It's like a whole big thing. So we just are supposed to follow the prophet and never question anything, ever. We aren't supposed to go learn for ourselves. They came out with, when the internet became big, doubt your doubts, don't doubt your faith. Like, they make all these really good little, slangs, and you don't learn any weird stuff. You just are supposed to do what you're told, period. Especially if you're a girl.
What was that song about trees or something that all the kids
popcorn popping on the apricot tree?
So I mean, in that mentality, yeah, they're rhyming a whole generation of children to actually believe popcorn grows on trees, because the same thing that would have you not question if a blood amulet is real, or if second anointing is real, or if any of these things are real, you'd be like, well, I better not ask about the popcorn. Like, I already know what the answer is.
You don't ask a whole lot of questions growing up Mormon. And
that would be one for me. If I was growing up and I was singing this song and I found out one day that popcorn doesn't actually grow on trees.
It was the most fun song in church, though, because it had hand stuff like popcorn popping on the apricot tree. Like, it was fun. It was fun.
But I would find out and be like, well, if they're lying about the popcorn, what else are they lying about?
Yeah, I did do that quite a few times and go to the bishop about quite a few things. And I'm sure I got on the naughty list. Like, you can't be talking. My grandma finally did say, if you want to keep in good standing, you better shut up. And I was like, what? I just want to know the answer. Cause my grandma told me that if you go to the temple, you can't do oral things in your bedroom. And I was like, well, then I'm not going. And I was like, well, that's enough of that. Like, we'll wrap that up. All done. And so I went and asked the bishop because I was brave enough. My grandma was like, no, it's just stop it. Just don't do that. Like, and I was like, I got to know this answer. This is crazy.
This
They're
is
going to
the
tell us.
actual deal breaker right here.
Well, like anything in your bedroom, like that's private. I was like, really? I mean, other than a third person or some kinky weird stuff like dogs or goats, like, come on now. Like, I don't get it. And the bishop like stopped me straight away. He's like, that was old. Just, I don't even want to know. I don't want to know. Go on your way.
I would love
He
an
did
undercover to
say-
go in a temple and just be like, look, I'm really into foot and poop stuff. Can this be compatible? Is there any way that this can be?
You know what he said to me? He said, anything that happens between only you and your husband alone in your bedroom that you both agree with, as long as it isn't like pornography or like, bringing a third person in or whatever, like kids, dogs, all that weird stuff, nothing like that, then we don't want to know. That's what he said.
Unless you're second anointed, then you can do anything that you freaking want to, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you can't, except you can't deny the Holy Ghost and you can't kill someone. So you got to be careful if you're into the choking, you can't accidentally choke her to death.
unless the Lord, divined it as such.
No, she needed a javelin if that was going to happen. Don't forget. It's all about that.
She slipped and fell on a javelin.
Yeah, slice and dicing.
This is a complete tangent, but I think a good place, because I don't know if I'll remember to ask this later, but also growing up Mormon, is there a Santa? Is there an Easter bunny? Is there a tooth fairy?
Guess what they love the most? Halloween. But yes, there's all of that and more.
Okay, so there's a Santa Claus, and you tell your kids that Santa was here and he brought these presents, and tooth fairy too. Like, you look under the pillow and there's $1 there.
All the things. Yep. Yeah, they love holidays, and that's what the women do. The women folk decorate and they make toll paintings of like the next holiday while the men are learning secret combinations. We're in there toll painting.
Are there popular Mormon Halloween outfits? Like,
it would be, they do love Harry Potter, Twilight, all these things. Stephanie Myers that wrote Twilight, she was Mormon. And so like that seems to
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was a Mormon, like became an ex-Mormon and then wrote it, or what?
No, I don't think I think she just was inactive. I don't know that she's ever been an ex-Mormon. I just think she's not. I think she might be a Jackmo. So we'd have to see nowadays. But yeah.
You could watch Twilight with a Mormon lens then.
Oh, Twilight was totally, people were like, yeah, it's fine. Just close your eyes on the sexual part. Like, it's fine. Like vampires, ooh. Like they like the little weird stuff. Like, they're very all about that. I don't think like cryptids and stuff like that, they're not against. They're like, yeah, probably true. I'm like, yeah, probably.
Kind of seems like an inversion though, right? Because in Twilight, Bella was trying to hook up with like 3 different guys. Where
one
if
was
it was
brown, so that was, no, just kidding. They changed it. They changed it in 1978. I'll stop.
Or so they say.
So they say. But he was Native American, so he would be on a pass. He's a pass.
Well, if anything, that's encouraged, because she needs to bring a more delightsome lineage to that whole family, right?
Right, and delightsome. Yep, that's exactly true. And he is not the only one to speak of this. That white and delightsome business went on for a long time, prophet after prophet after prophet.
Well, who's whiter than a vampire?
No one. I know. Maybe they're really into that. I don't know. But they have like the trunk or treats over. They actually ruined Halloween, because they do the trunk or treats at the church, Well, I'm not a member. And so, and they also, if any holiday falls on a Sunday, it doesn't have a holiday here in Utah. So it's like on the day before, or the day after. And so Halloween can never be on a Sunday. Halloween can never be just kids knocking on your door getting candy anymore. They're at the church. Well, we don't go to the church. So yeah, it's a whole
So if a
thing.
Halloween falls on a Sunday, they just postpone it. Like the Mormons will just throw their own Halloween the day
Saturday
after.
or the whole state. The whole state. It's a thing. It's the whole state.
So
Yeah.
if you're not a Mormon, do you get to have 2 Halloweens
Get to
then
go
if you live in like
twice.
a Mormon
Yep.
community?
You bet. I
That's
take
kinda
my
cool.
kids twice. I take my kids twice for sure. I'm like, yep, you want some more candy? Let's go.
Yeah, do
Let's
do
go do
Mormons
it.
give better candy than Christians or
Just
secularists?
rich, just rich people. Yeah. There's rich Mormons. They do. But otherwise, meh. And I mean, but they're not against like celebrating anything or saying it's demonic or any of that stuff. They don't care.
What about coffee flavored candies?
Coffee flavoring is okay, but the coffee itself, but I heard they changed it. I heard they're changing things. They're so progressive now that they say it is whatever you feel it should be. And I'm like, oh, is that the same for cocaine or what's happening with that? Like, I just think it's funny that they would go back on something that they've been like, this is the law for so long, you know. I don't know, but whatever. Yeah, who knows? I'm pretty sure they're progressive enough that you're gonna see like them endorse a lot of things over the next 10 years.
If
A
if they
lot.
want me to join anytime soon, that would definitely be a huge step forward. You go into temple and they're like, here's some high THC dabs for you to enjoy while you're going through this. Here's an edible. Here's a line of Coke. They just kind
I
of like
mean,
hook you up on the way in.
I could not do that. That makes me psychotic. Weed makes me psychotic. I don't know why, but yeah, I think I'm allergic. I really do. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know. I think they're very less worried about it. Like they got more, it used to be no tattoos, none of this business. I mean, you had tattoos going to the church. Whoa, ho, ho, you heathen, you know? And so actually, I had a tattoo on the back of my neck. And when I got it, I had really long hair. Well, now I wear my hair pretty short and it's pretty visible and it's big. There's just no way. It's like all the way down my back. And I know that was like a angsty thing to do, but I didn't mean it to be. I had the long hair when I got it. But live and learn. Yeah, it's been changing. It's changed along the ways. So I dare say their biggest thing would be they need to change the garments because I think a lot of people complain about the garments. If they really wanted to get quote unquote progressive, like changing the garments would be a big thing, but I don't know if they would ever do it. I mean, just throwing out ideas,
But
Mormons.
we've talked about this before that it's not the garment that's magic, but it's the symbol that's magic. And once the symbol exists, there's no special anointing or magic blessing or anything that necessarily has to happen, just getting the symbol. So I mean, if they did allow tattoos, you could just get it tattooed on you and now you don't have
On
to
your
wear
breast,
underpants.
on both
Yeah.
boobies.
Yeah. That would be kind of
Could
hot. A
you
little square and
imagine?
compass, like all like a Freemasonic sort of thing going on.
And your belly button slit. You gotta do the belly button slit. So you just color it in. That's hysterical. I mean, I definitely wouldn't want my nipples tattooed with that, but hey, whatever. Whatever people wanna do, they can do. I just don't know that it's I mean, if you don't even know who your own God is, do you really wanna trust them? Like, at least the Catholics always they never falter. Their God is this one, and that's all.
Well,
Like,
maybe
that's
until you
it.
start getting deep into the Trinity and you're like, wait, so
Oh, yeah.
how about this
True.
Holy Spirit and God the Father and God the Son stuff? And it's the less you ask, the
Oh.
more you'll understand.
It's so true in every religion and or secret society, right? Just when you think you have it figured out, you don't know anything. You don't know shit. Like that's the truth. That's that's the truth. I mean, it doesn't phase me from not trying. But I don't think you ever, if you, in anything in life, if you're trying to study anything, it doesn't matter what it is. We always say in nursing, the scariest nurse is the nurse that never asks for help and thinks she knows it all, because those people are, they're going to kill somebody. Like, that's terrifying. You want a nurse that even if they've been doing this 25 years, if something changed yesterday, they're not afraid to say, what's up with this? I've never seen this before. Right. Like, it's better to ask. Yeah.
You want Nurse Ratchet and not the new training nurse that's super nice to everyone.
Oh my. Yeah. Well, you definitely, it could go either way, because Nurse Ratchet was pretty inflexible, and she wouldn't, I don't know if she would accept asking questions, right? Like, she was kind of a sassy lady, but who knows? I don't
So
know.
if gun to head, if you had to pick a prophet to follow, are you going with Smith or are you going with Young?
Smith.
I think so too. Because the worst
Young
case
is
scenario is that
crazy.
Smith steals your girlfriend or your wife, but worst case scenario, the Brigham Young is that he murders you.
Well, and he, there's a lot of evidence, and people actually conjecture that Smith was killed. One of the reasons that possibly Brigham would have had him killed, this is just conjecture, that it was because he actually baptized a black person, and he wasn't anti, black people or any of this. So I'm in that camp, obviously, because some of my family members are black and brown and all the colors of the rainbow. So I'm definitely not a racist, and I just find that disgusting, with having a black niece, and my other my nephews are half Samoan and they're half Hawaiian, half Chinese. Like, it's not, yeah. I don't think really God cares about any of that. We're all made in his image, and I think it's silly for people to think that one's better than the other. And I don't think Joseph Smith was that way. And I do think if he had been let go far enough, that would have changed earlier. And many people say that that's one of the reasons that got him killed, because he was an abolitionist. He didn't believe in it. So who knows? But
that's also interesting dynamic, is that Brigham Young was a contemporary of Joseph Smith, and Brigham Young. So when Joseph Smith died, he was in like his late 30s. And at that moment, Brigham Young was in his early 40s. So they were almost the same age. He was a little bit older. You could almost see him being like, this young kid doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I could do a better job than this guy's doing.
Yeah, it's true. And he had been all over the world. He served a lot of missions. So I think he had more worldly knowledge, we'll say. Like, he'd been to England. He'd had a lot of exposure to way more things, Brigham Young did. And he also knew about how important law was. There's a lot of quotes about law. He was no dummy. Okay. I don't think Joseph Smith was dumb either. And I hate, my number one hatred of how Joseph Smith is portrayed as a dumb farm boy that knew all this hermetic knowledge. Get the hell out of here. He was not stupid, and he was studying Hebrew. He was studying all the time. Like, I don't believe that. And I think it's actually a tragedy that he is portrayed that way, because whether or not I agree with him, what he did was pretty big. I mean, let's be honest, he created a complete American religion on his own, whether or not on his own, right? With angels or not, who knows? Angels, demons, we don't know. But
And Freemasons, don't leave them out.
Yeah.
They were
It's a
part of
pretty
that.
big feat, right? It's a pretty big feat. He's involved in the Morgan affair. He's marrying their wives. Like, this is a wild thing that he's doing. Like, he's going all over the place in his era. So, Brigham Young just had to pick it up and make it his. That's not nearly as hard.
And there's an interesting thread there too, that if there's any relevance at all to that, Brigham Young was upset that Joseph Smith was baptizing black people into Mormonism, and then Joseph Smith dies in a city, Carthage, named after a city in Africa, right?
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that. That's interesting. Huh. Well, I know that he did believe in that. And I know that one thing about Brigham was he was 100% a racist. And so, I don't know that was where the church was going, honestly. And I also don't think that Joseph Smith was like Brigham Young in the way that Brigham was hungry for wealth and power and all that. Joseph Smith just seems like this flighty little guy that just wants to bang girls, right? Like he's like, do, like, I'm just gonna go find me another wife today.
And he wants
like
you to pay his bill to get to the girl's house too.
For sure. But he's not
Yeah.
looking for more. He's not looking for, you know, tons of money or mansions or wealth. Whereas Brigham Young, I mean, he didn't live in any shacks. I'll tell you that. I've been to quite a few of his homes. You know, they're pretty nice. He didn't look like he ever missed a meal.
Worth it? If you got to have the nicest of Brigham Young's houses that you've ever seen, worth it?
I don't know.
If you had to flip his little fupa up and down.
Oh, nah. I'm mean. I can't share. It's not even about the fupa. I'm like, I don't share. Yeah, my husband knows. He's the same way, so it's fine. We make a good couple that way. So I'm just like, yeah, mess up that way, and that's it. Split it down the middle. Well, bye.
So
that's all she wrote.
Where do we go from here? We've done.
And he's the same.
Where do we go from Brigham Young? Like, what's the next deep dive that we do?
I think we should do one on witchcraft and the craft of Mormonism per se, because there is a lot of stuff that goes into that. And I think this Zena Morgan, she's actually one of my relatives. So I'm vastly interested in this.
Can we get her on? Let's get her on.
She
well,
did.
can we
You gonna
do a
summon?
seance?
Not for me. You and Andreas can.
You won't do a seance
he doesn't
to get her
believe
on?
she's dead. No way. I don't do no seance. I'm scared.
Please.
Yeah, no way. Mwah. She might show up and then she'll lie to you, just like John Dee's angels. And then
But just imagine the amount of traffic and clicks and ad revenue if we did the first seance that provably shows that you can summon someone from the dead. It seems like the advantages would outweigh the eternal damnation.
We're liars. They'll just say, "Oh, they lied."
But even that would still be interesting. That would still get you the clicks and the reviews and the.
Andreas will do it, and I'll come on and tell you all the people.
I don't know if he will. That's actually a good question. I'll ask Andreas. I'm actually shocked at the number of people that will not summon a demon with me on a live stream.
I wouldn't summon a demon on a not live stream. I'm terrified of stuff like that. No way. I already have enough problems with little noises and things that go bump in the night. No thanks. I'm scared of that stuff. No way.
Okay, so next show we'll do Mormon witchcraft, I guess. Are we just going to do
and folk magic? Maybe we should throw that in there since.
Okay, I would actually be interested in, because we did the folk magic and early Mormonism kind of book review, but in that one we just kind of noted that he had the magus, he had these like goetic sort of grimoire. So maybe if we found exactly where you're claiming the Exmo is claiming that he got this from, maybe we can talk about the magus a little bit more and other books that he was reading.
Or there's another interesting one that I've been searching into is there was a certain masonry bestowed upon the Mormons, upon the prophets of the church, and it has to do with Hitler. And it's like some masonry that was over there and a big deal. But anyway, there's a lot of ties to Hitler. And one of the people that went to help Hitler's people after the war ended was the Mormons. I found that very interesting. There's some weird stuff there.
And the Vatican was also helpful to the Germans because they saw the Germans as the lesser of two evils between that and communism, because communism was godless. And they were like, well, this guy might be bad, but at least he believes in God. Like, we can't support people that don't believe in God at all. So
yeah. Or we can think on it. If you guys have any suggestions, leave it. I know it's not live, but leave it in the show notes. We're down to go down that trail, but I'm sure there's plenty of trails that we could go down. There's a Diddy trail. I can tell you that right now.
I'm staying away from Diddy trails. They don't lead to anywhere good.
They lead to Tim Ballard.
Freak off.
They lead to white people doing white people stuff.
Well,
That's
let's
what.
do the witchcraft one, and maybe even tie in some other like Mormon Halloween
Yeah,
traditions that maybe
that'll
we
be
don't know
fun.
about, because that would be good for
Yeah.
October.
Well, this will be good anyway because I've been wanting to do this. So the Hogwarts of Joseph Smith. I don't know, but whatever we call it, it's a perfect one for Halloween time. So
Okay,
we got
we'll brainstorm on
games.
like a Wizarding World of Joseph Smith kind of name for that.
Yes, and I'll bring a slideshow for that one because that one's pretty fun. So we got snake canes, we got coffin canes, we got all kinds of fun stuff.
All right. Well,
So we'll do it.
until next time, we'll leave it up to you on whether or not you want to become a Mormon. I think I might be more sold now than when we started. That's my new metric.
You're a menace. You're a menace to society. You have to get married right away.
That makes me like it even more, though. Like you're gonna legitimately say I'm a menace. Like I'm in. I like this.
Menace to society because you need to get a couple wives. How's your girlfriend going to feel about that?
While drinking my juice in the hood.
She's going to have to go along to get along. She'll have to be the number one.
But she gets a nice house out of it, or I have to get the house and then give it to her.
Yeah, it's still the same.
Honestly,
and you
that
gotta pump out some kids.
If they've got money, if the Mormon church has the money for it, imagine if they were like, hey, anyone that converts to Mormonism and starts making Mormon babies, once you've got 10 kids, you get a brand new house. You just won Price is Right. I almost feel that would be a huge incentive.
They kind of do that in a secret type of way, right? They do that with their connects because all their business connects. It's like who you know, not what you know. It's all about you. You do know that they built a whole suburb here and they called it Mount Olympus for the gods.
Just normal Christian Jesus stuff.
And they don't really say whether there's a god or gods, and we could chuck this in with the magical stuff. They do call him Elohim, which I find hilarious since we know that means plural. That's not even a one god deal. Like, come on. You know, this is, and we could go into gods with this whole magical thing because it definitely goes there. So all these fun little rabbit holes I like to go down. My husband thinks I'm crazy. It's fine. He's like, don't tell me any of this stuff. My mom is still in. This makes me feel weird. No, I'm just kidding.
Just don't ask her about the bath full of oil.
Right? She's not old enough. Have to go to the grandma.
Grandma, so any Mormons out there that have grandparents or great grandparents, just ask them about their temple ritual.
I'm serious. Do it because your answer will be you won't. It was a lot. It was a lot. And
it was a 1900s P. Diddy freak off. That's basically what temple rituals are.
I wonder if there were drugs in the oil. Like maybe this is why they were all having visions.
Look, you're going to have to move fast. Conspiracy cards from Paranoid American are here.
Conspiracy cards, flip it, what's the deal? Conspiracy cards with that paranoid seal. Pack it, unwrap it, truth in these stacks. Flip one, flip two, get a few of these packs. Flip it up, what's next? Move fake, we flex. Bigfoot in the woods, stay lying, that's facts. MK Ultra, no cap. Every yacht 51 is a trap. Roswell crash, what's that? They hide the truth, where's that? Conspiracy cards, flip it, what's the deal? Conspiracy cards with that paranoid seal. Pack it, unwrap it, truth in these stacks. Flip one, flip two, get a few of these packs.
That's right, Conspiracy Cards from Paranoid American. A set of over 200 cards featuring legendary conspiracy theorists, cult leaders, esoteric secrets, and more. For more details, visit conspiracycards.com today.
Paranoid. Yo.
I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper, the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe a language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.